Groovy English Podcast.
Hey there! Welcome back to Groovy English. I'm Chloe.
And I'm Aiden. We share real stories, useful tips, and everyday English to help you grow with confidence.
Wherever you are in your English learning journey, we're glad you're here.
If you're enjoying the podcast, feel free to like, subscribe, or share it with a friend.
Let's get started.
When we talk about food, we usually think about taste, smell, and the joy of eating. But the words we use to describe food often carry rich histories, revealing journeys of people, trade, migration, and culture. Every bite we take comes with a story, and every word on our plate holds secrets from the past. From spices to desserts, from staple grains to street food, the language of food is a living history, waiting to be explored. Take the word curry, for instance. Today, it's almost synonymous with a variety of spiced dishes from India, but the word itself traveled far. British colonial traders brought it back to England, and over time, curry became a catch-all term for many South Asian dishes. Yet in India, each region has its own word for specific preparations. Masala, sabzi, korma, each reflecting local ingredients, climate, and taste traditions. When we say curry, we are using a word shaped by centuries of trade, colonization, and cultural exchange. The word itself tells a story as rich as the dish. Spices offer another window into history. Words like cinnamon, clove, and pepper carry the echoes of ancient trade routes. Cinnamon comes from the Greek cinnamomon, which in turn borrowed from older Semitic languages. Clove's name traces back to the Latin clavis, meaning nail, because of its shape. These words are reminders that long before packaged spice jars, people traveled vast distances, by camel, ship, and foot to move these precious ingredients. The words themselves became a map of human movement, reflecting centuries of commerce and curiosity. Bread, a simple staple, also tells stories through language. Words like baguette, ciabatta, and tortilla are more than just names. They speak of place, culture, and tradition. Tortilla comes from the Spanish word for little cake, while ciabatta means slipper, referencing the bread's shape. Each term evokes a specific region, method, and history. When we order a baguette or make a tortilla, we are connecting, through language, to centuries of culinary practice and cultural identity. Even everyday words like tea carry layers of history. The English word tea comes from the Chinese tea, adopted via trade in southern China. But in India, the beverage is called chai from the Mandarin cha. These linguistic differences track colonial routes and trade networks, showing how a simple drink became global. When we sip tea and call it by its name, we're engaging with a story that spans continents, from plantations in China to markets in England and cafes in India. Desserts, too, offer fascinating tales through words. Baklava, mochi, tiramisu, these names are portals into history. Baklava, with its layers of phyllo and nuts, reflects centuries of influence from the Ottoman Empire, Greece, and the Middle East. Mochi carries the soft, chewy tradition of Japanese rice cakes, celebrated during festivals and New Year rituals. Tiramisu, literally pick me up in Italian, reflects both language and culture, combining culinary delight with playful metaphor. Each dessert name is a historical breadcrumb, guiding us through migration, trade, and cultural evolution. Street food often has similar stories embedded in its names. The word samosa, for instance, originates from Persian sambasag, brought to the Indian subcontinent centuries ago. Today, it's a beloved snack across South Asia, East Africa, and beyond. The language travels alongside the food, connecting diasporas, traders, and generations. When someone buys a samosa in Nairobi or Mumbai, they're engaging with a centuries-old linguistic and culinary journey. Even modern food words carry history. Words like hamburger or pizza evoke migration and adaptation. Hamburger comes from Hamburg, Germany, yet the American version of it evolved through immigrant innovation. Pizza, originating in Naples, spread globally, adapting toppings, names, and flavors to local tastes. The evolution of the word parallels the evolution of the dish itself, showing how language and food grow together, reshaping identity while preserving cultural memory. Herbs and plants offer subtle histories as well. Basil traces back to the Greek basilikon, meaning royal, reflecting its association with sacred and noble tables. Rosemary comes from Latin rosmarinus, meaning dew of the sea, indicating the plant's coastal origins. These words tell us about geography, symbolism, and human interaction with the natural world. Each word is a clue, a small historical record embedded in everyday language. Some food words reveal social history. Consider coffee and cafe. Coffee traveled from Ethiopia to Yemen, then to Europe, carrying both the word and the ritual of drinking. The word café in French evolved to signify a gathering place, a social hub. Through language, we see not only the physical journey of coffee, but also the cultural importance of communal spaces where people meet, converse, and exchange ideas. Fermented foods also have rich linguistic stories. Kimchi, sauerkraut, and kombucha are more than culinary terms. They are tied to tradition, preservation, and regional identity. Kimchi reflects Korean seasonal rituals and community preparation. Sauerkraut traces back to Germanic methods of preserving cabbage through long winters. Kombucha's name has debated origins, yet it symbolizes cross-cultural transmission from East Asia to the West. Each fermented food word is a testament to human ingenuity and cultural continuity. Grains, the basis of life, carry historical narratives in their names. Quinoa, farro, and bulgur speak of geography, agriculture, and survival. Quinoa connects us to the Andes and ancient Incan culture. Farro recalls the grains of Mediterranean civilizations, while bulgur traces centuries of Middle Eastern culinary practice. When we say these words, we participate in a linguistic and agricultural history that nourished civilizations and shaped human settlement. Cooking techniques also have stories. Words like sauté, braise, roast, and grill reveal culture and method. Sauté comes from the French verb sauter, meaning to jump, describing the movement of food in a hot pan. Each term not only instructs but narrates, telling the listener something about the culture, the style of cooking, and even the mindset of the chef. Language and culinary art entwine, creating a shared cultural vocabulary. Cheese names are fascinating historical markers. Words like brie, Gouda, and Manchego are geographic and cultural markers rooted in tradition. Brie comes from the region in France where it was first made, Gouda from the Dutch city of the same name, Manchego from Spain's La Mancha region. Even when we enjoy these cheeses far from their origins, the words preserve and transmit history, keeping the culture alive on our plates. Chocolate, one of the world's most beloved foods, carries history in its name too. Chocolate comes from the Nahuatl word zacalotl, meaning bitter water, from the Aztec civilization. European traders adapted the word as cacao moved across the Atlantic. Every chocolate bar we unwrap is a reminder of this linguistic and culinary journey, linking Mesoamerica to modern global economies and taste cultures. Rice is another word steeped in history. Arroz in Spanish, riz in French, rice in English all point to migration, trade, and linguistic adaptation. Rice cultivation shaped societies across Asia, Africa, and Europe. The words we use today track these agricultural and cultural journeys, showing how a staple food influenced language, economy, and identity across continents. Street snacks also provide linguistic history. Consider pretzel from the German Brezel, shaped like arms folded in prayer. It started as a symbolic snack among monks and spread throughout Europe. When it crossed the Atlantic with German immigrants, the word adapted and traveled further. Food words like this carry layers of meaning, religious, social, and historical, all embedded in a simple snack. Sweets and candies reveal similar stories. Marzipan traces to the Arabic mathaban, traveling through trade to Europe. Gingerbread shows linguistic evolution and culinary adaptation in medieval Europe, when spices were highly prized. These words are sweet not only in taste, but in the cultural histories they preserve, reminding us how global interactions shaped even the smallest treats. Even beverages tell stories. Words like sake, mezcal, and chai connect language to ritual and culture. Sake reflects centuries of Japanese brewing tradition, mezcal the agave cultivation and distillation methods of Mexico, and chai the centuries-old spice-infused tea of South Asia. The words themselves are passports into history, allowing us to understand not just ingredients, but worldview, geography, and cultural practice. Farm-to-table words like organic, heirloom, and artisanal also reflect social history. They indicate shifts in agriculture, commerce, and values. These terms show how language adapts to changing times, preserving older traditions while embracing new social priorities. Each word tells a story about human interaction with the land and evolving attitudes toward food and sustainability. Food words are fascinating not only because they describe what we eat, but because they carry centuries of human movement. The very names of ingredients, dishes, and cooking methods often reveal trade routes, migration patterns, and cultural exchanges. When we examine a simple menu, we can uncover a hidden map of history, showing how people, ideas, and tastes traveled across continents. Every bite and every word is a story waiting to be told, and understanding these stories helps us appreciate food not just as nourishment, but as living history. Consider the word pasta. While today it evokes Italian cuisine, its roots trace back to various regions across Asia and the Middle East. Some historians argue that pasta arrived in Italy through trade with Arab cultures in Sicily, and the earliest references point to noodles made from flour and water. Linguistically, the term pasta comes from the Latin pasta, meaning dough or paste. The journey of pasta is a story of cultural fusion, adaptation, and regional innovation, showing how one word can carry centuries of culinary exchange. Grains such as wheat, barley, and millet also reveal histories through language. Wheat comes from the Old English wheat, reflecting ancient agricultural practices in Europe. Barley comes from Old English bear, showing how staple crops were deeply intertwined with daily life, trade, and economy. Across continents, the names of grains highlight not only what people ate, but also where they cultivated, traded, and relied upon these foods for survival. Language, in this sense, becomes a record of human ingenuity and sustenance. Meat terms are equally revealing. The English words beef, pork, and mutton come from Norman French boeuf, pork, and mouton, showing the linguistic influence of conquerors on everyday life. Interestingly, the animals themselves retained their Germanic-derived names cow, pig, and sheep. This linguistic layering reflects social hierarchy. The French-speaking nobility ate the meat, while the Anglo-Saxon peasants raised the animals. Every time we say these words, we are unconsciously echoing centuries of social structure and historical interaction. Seafood names also carry rich cultural histories. Salmon comes from Latin salmo, which traces to the verb salire, meaning to leap, referencing the fish's jumping behavior. Tuna comes from the Spanish atum, derived from the Arabic tuin, reflecting the influence of Moorish Spain. Even everyday seafood vocabulary highlights journeys across language, geography, and human commerce, revealing that food is rarely just food. It is a historical artifact. Vegetables often provide similar insights. Potato originates from the Spanish patata, which in turn borrowed from the Taino word batata, a sweet potato native to the Caribbean. Tomato comes from Nahuatl tomatal, carried across the Atlantic and integrated into European cuisine. Every word is a trace of colonial history, global trade, and cultural adaptation, showing how language evolves alongside culinary practice. When we say potato or tomato, we speak a word shaped by continents, centuries, and countless human hands. Herbs and spices are linguistic passports in themselves. Saffron derives from Arabic za'afaran, revealing trade routes across the Middle East and Europe. Turmeric comes from Latin terra merita, meaning meritorious earth, though its use spans South Asia and beyond. Each herb or spice word tells a story of cultural fascination, desire for flavor, and the movement of goods. Understanding these names is like retracing the paths of merchants, adventurers, and explorers who connected worlds through taste. Dairy terms carry geography and culture too. Cheddar comes from the village of Cheddar in England, linking food directly to place. Feta, the famous Greek cheese, literally means slice, describing both its shape and method of serving. Cheese names often tell stories of place, method, and cultural pride. When we use these words, we are not just naming ingredients, we are invoking centuries of regional history, artisanal craft, and cultural identity. Cooking methods reveal layers of historical influence. Grill, roast, broil, and simmer come from different linguistic roots, reflecting technological and cultural development. Grill comes from the French griller, to scorch, while broil comes from the Old French brûler, meaning to burn. These words hint at changing techniques, tools, and cuisines, tracing the evolution of cooking across time and place. When we say them, we are speaking a language shaped by centuries of experimentation in the kitchen. Street foods offer some of the clearest historical narratives. Dumpling comes from the English dialect dambon, referring to a lump of dough. Across Asia, the word dumpling is used broadly in English to describe foods like Chinese jiaozi, Japanese gyoza, or Polish pierogi. The linguistic shift reflects adaptation and cultural exchange, showing how one word can travel and transform alongside a dish, connecting diverse culinary traditions. Desserts, too, carry rich stories in their names. Pudding, for example, comes from the Old French boudin, meaning sausage, originally referring to a stuffed dish, not sweet food. Over time, the meaning evolved in England to signify creamy or baked desserts. Croissant comes from French, meaning crescent, reflecting both shape and cultural symbolism. Each dessert word encapsulates transformation, migration, and the creativity of cooks over centuries. Bakery words are filled with history as well. Brioche comes from Old French brier, meaning to knead, reflecting the labor-intensive preparation. Focaccia in Italy comes from Latin focus, meaning hearth, emphasizing the role of fire in baking. When we speak these words, we are connecting to centuries-old culinary knowledge, passed from generation to generation, embedded in the language itself. Legume names carry agricultural and linguistic heritage. Lentil comes from Latin lens, reflecting the plant's shape and long-standing cultivation. Chickpea traces to Old French chiche, ultimately from Latin cicer, linking Europe to the Mediterranean and Near East. Every legume word we use hints at human settlement, trade, and dietary reliance, showing that even humble beans carry centuries of history. Beverage names are historical signposts too. Wine comes from Latin vinum, connecting Europe to the ancient Mediterranean wine cultures. Beer comes from Old English beer, whose precise origins are debated but indicate early brewing traditions. The names of drinks reveal both technological innovation and social customs. Drinking a beverage, saying its name, and passing it across a table is a continuation of centuries of ritual, trade, and shared enjoyment. Fermented foods carry stories of preservation and culture. Yogurt comes from Turkish yogurt, highlighting the nomadic dairy practices of Central Asia. Kimchi is derived from Korean kimchi, originally chimchi, referring to salted vegetables. Sauerkraut comes from German, meaning sour cabbage. Each name preserves methods, taste preferences, and cultural priorities. In this way, language carries both culinary technique and the essence of a people's lifestyle. Spices and their words are windows into desire and exploration. Ginger comes from Old English gingifer, from Latin zingiberi, from Sanskrit gavra. Nutmeg comes from Latin nux moscata, meaning musky nut. Each term reveals centuries of trade, colonization, and human curiosity. Language maps the movement of goods and ideas, turning simple ingredients into markers of global history. Even sauces tell stories. Mayonnaise likely comes from French moyeu, meaning egg yolk, reflecting preparation methods and regional influence. Salsa is Spanish for sauce, yet the word has traveled worldwide to describe a range of condiments. Chutney comes from Hindi chatni, pointing to South Asian culinary practices adopted globally. These words track cultural transmission, adaptation, and the global spread of taste. Tea and coffee words illustrate both trade and social life. Tea comes from Min Chinese tea, while chai comes from Mandarin cha. Coffee comes from Arabic koa, reflecting centuries of cultivation and trade. Tea and coffee rituals and the words associated with them show how a beverage can be a vessel for culture, conversation, and history. Food-related idioms preserve history too. Phrases like bring home the bacon or spill the beans are linguistic fossils rooted in past practices. Bring home the bacon originates from a medieval English tradition of awarding bacon for marital fidelity, while spill the beans comes from ancient voting practices using beans. Idioms connect language, food, and social history, revealing how meals and words intertwine with human life. Even fast food tells stories. Words like burger, hot dog, and fries carry linguistic and cultural histories. Burger comes from Hamburg, fries from French fries, and hot dog likely from German immigrant sausages. These names narrate migration, adaptation, and globalization, showing how language and food evolve together. Cereal names, too, hold stories. Granola comes from Latin granum, meaning grain, showing the shift from ancient agriculture to modern breakfast foods. Muesli was coined in Switzerland by Maximilian Bircher-Brenner, highlighting both linguistic creativity and health movements. Breakfast language reflects cultural priorities, nutrition trends, and innovation. Chocolate-based desserts reveal migration and exchange. Brownie, an American invention, contrasts with brigadeiro, a Brazilian favorite. Words capture local culture, technique, and taste, showing how desserts travel and evolve across regions. Food words also preserve memory. Comfort food isn't just a phrase. It evokes emotional connections, nostalgia, and cultural belonging. Every language has equivalents, from French plat réconfortant to Japanese ayashi ryuri, reflecting universal human attachment to food as memory and culture. Snack words highlight colonial histories. Banana comes from West African languages, mango from Sanskrit m with macron g with macron. These fruits traveled via trade, colonization, and exploration, and the words carry those journeys. Fast casual and street snack names reveal creativity. Bao, arepa, empanada. Each term connects us to regions, preparation methods, and cultural identity. Even the simplest snack is linguistically layered, carrying centuries of story. Bread continues to tell tales. Naan comes from Persian, pita from Greek, roti from Sanskrit. Each word maps culinary history, linking geography, language, and migration patterns. Pasta varieties reveal local pride. Fusilli, penne, tagliatelle, the names describe shapes, preparation, and regional origin, connecting people to the land and local tradition. Staple grains carry hidden histories in their names. Barley, millet, and quinoa are not just foods. They are markers of human adaptation and survival. Barley was cultivated in ancient Mesopotamia, and its name derives from Old English bear, connecting us to early agricultural societies. Millet, grown in Africa and Asia for millennia, carries names in dozens of languages, each reflecting a local culture and method of preparation. Quinoa's journey from the Andes to global tables preserves the linguistic echoes of the Inca civilization. These words remind us that human sustenance and culture are inseparable. Legumes are equally revealing. Lentil comes from Latin lens, reflecting its small, lens-like shape, but also pointing to a time when legumes were crucial for survival in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Chickpea originates from Latin cicer, showing how culinary and linguistic histories intertwine. These humble beans illustrate that even ordinary foods carry stories of trade, migration, and culinary ingenuity. By speaking their names, we honor centuries of agricultural practice and human creativity. Spices have always been more than flavor. They are linguistic and cultural markers. Cinnamon comes from Hebrew cinnamon, clove from Latin clavis, and nutmeg from Latin nux moscata. Each name traces a path across oceans, deserts, and mountains, following the hands of merchants, sailors, and explorers. When we sprinkle cinnamon in our coffee or bake nutmeg into a pie, we are tasting a world shaped by language, commerce, and cultural exchange. Herbs tell stories of symbolism and ritual. Basil comes from Greek basilikon, meaning royal, reflecting its sacred and noble associations. Rosemary derives from Latin rosmarinus, meaning dew of the sea, linking plant to place and poetry. Even these small words are vessels for centuries of culture, reminding us that language is intertwined with the natural world and human imagination. Meat terms often reveal social history. In English, beef comes from French boeuf, pork from pork, and mutton from mouton, reflecting Norman influence on the English language after the conquest of 1066. Meanwhile, the animals retained Anglo-Saxon names: cow, pig, sheep. This duality in terminology reveals centuries-old social hierarchies, where language mirrored power, class, and culinary consumption. Seafood vocabulary is equally illuminating. Salmon comes from Latin salmo, linked to the fish's leaping behavior, while tuna derives from Arabic tuan, showing centuries of trade between Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. The words themselves are reminders of ancient exploration, commerce, and human ingenuity, showing how language can preserve the story of survival and migration along rivers and seas. Vegetables often carry histories that span continents. Potato comes from the Spanish patata, which borrowed from the Taino word batata, originally a sweet potato. Tomato comes from Nahuatl tomatal, revealing its Mesoamerican origins. The words for these staples encapsulate journeys across oceans, colonial encounters, and cultural adaptation, reminding us that what we eat today is a product of centuries of global exchange. Cooking methods hold history in their syllables. Sauté comes from the French verb sauter, meaning to jump, describing food dancing in a hot pan. Braise comes from Old French braiser, referring to cooking over embers. Simmer comes from Old English Cimmerian, reflecting gentle, prolonged heat. Through these words, we glimpse both technique and cultural heritage, showing that language itself is a culinary tool passed through generations. Bread names are portals to place and culture. Naan originates from Persian, pita from Greek, and ciabatta from Italian. Each word carries geography, tradition, and identity. When we call a loaf ciabatta, we are invoking the Italian countryside and centuries of baking knowledge. Bread, more than any other staple, links sustenance to culture and language. Desserts tell stories of taste, trade, and creativity. Baklava comes from Ottoman kitchens, combining phyllo, nuts, and honey. Mochi comes from Japanese culture, reflecting rice cultivation and ceremonial traditions. Tiramisu means pick-me-up in Italian, blending culinary and linguistic playfulness. Each dessert word conveys history, ritual, and emotion, proving that sweetness is not just flavor but narrative. Street foods provide fascinating insight into linguistic migration. Samosa comes from Persian sambasag, adapted across South Asia and East Africa. Arepa comes from indigenous Venezuelan and Colombian languages. Bao originates in Chinese cuisine. These words travel as far as the foods themselves, highlighting trade, migration, and adaptation over centuries. Beverage words reveal social history. Tea comes from Min Chinese tea, while chai comes from Mandarin cha. Coffee derives from Arabic koa, tracing back to Ethiopian origins. Every sip we take carries language that tells the story of exploration, trade, and ritual, reminding us that even a drink can be a historical artifact. Fermented foods preserve stories of culture and innovation. Yogurt comes from Turkish yogurt, kimchi from Korean kimchi, sauerkraut from German, meaning sour cabbage. Each name reflects preparation techniques, regional tastes, and social customs, showing how language is intertwined with survival, ritual, and creativity. Cheese names reveal geography and pride. Brie from France, Gouda from the Netherlands, Manchego from Spain. Each term preserves centuries of artisanal knowledge, reflecting local climate, pasture, and tradition. Cheese words are living histories, connecting us to land, livestock, and culture. Sweet words carry migration stories. Marzipan comes from Arabic mathaban. Gingerbread shows European adaptation of exotic spices. Each dessert name is a trace of trade, cultural borrowing, and adaptation, showing how words preserve movement of people and tastes. Fast food vocabulary also narrates history. Burger comes from Hamburg, Germany, yet the dish evolved in America. Hot dog originates from German sausages adapted in New York. Fries come from Belgium or France, depending on the story. The language around fast food captures migration, adaptation, and globalization. Snack words preserve history. Banana from West African languages, mango from Sanskrit M with macron G with macron, chocolate from Nahuatl Zocolatl. These words carry centuries of trade, colonization, and cultural fascination. Each bite becomes a linguistic journey across continents. Breakfast foods tell stories too. Granola comes from Latin granum, meaning grain, showing the evolution of breakfast culture. Muesli originates in Switzerland, highlighting health movements. The words connect nutrition, tradition, and social change. Food idioms are linguistic fossils. Bring home the bacon originates in medieval England. Spill the beans from ancient voting methods. These phrases reveal how meals, language, and social practices intertwine, embedding history into everyday speech. Street snack words reflect creativity and migration. Empanada from Spanish, pasty from English miners' food, bao from China. Each name tells a story of adaptation, culture, and survival, proving that even casual food carries history. Culinary festival foods preserve ritual and language. Words like panettone, mooncake, or latke carry seasonal, religious, and cultural significance. Every syllable reflects celebration, geography, and tradition. Spices and their words highlight human curiosity. Clove, coriander, cardamom, each traces trade routes, colonization, and culinary fascination. Language captures the movement of taste and desire. Herbs continue the story of symbolism. Thyme comes from Latin thymus, sage from Latin salvia. Both words show the medicinal, culinary, and cultural roles plants played in history. Grain-based desserts preserve culture. Baklava and halva show Ottoman and Middle Eastern influence. Semolina desserts connect European and North African culinary traditions. Words encapsulate these journeys. When we look at the words we use for food, we realize they are far more than simple labels. Each term, whether it names a grain, a spice, a dessert, or a street snack, is a living record of human history, trade, migration, and creativity. From the markets of ancient civilizations to modern kitchens around the world, these words have traveled, adapted, and survived, carrying with them stories of people, culture, and tradition. The next time you say samosa, ciabatta, or chocolate, pause and imagine the journeys behind that word, the hands that prepared it, the lands it crossed, the cultures it touched. Language and food are inseparable, and through their intersection, we discover the delicious narratives that connect us all. So, as you enjoy your next meal, remember, every bite and every word is a history lesson, a cultural bridge, and a story waiting to be shared.
Your English is shining brighter by the minute. Hit that next video to keep leveling up your skills. Or dive into our other episodes for more secrets to talk like a pro. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to join the Groovy English crew.